What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we have another edition of Overthinking MTG, the unscripted, unedited podcast where I talk about an individual card and expound about it and kind of share my thoughts for usually around 10 minutes, but we see how deep we can go. Today we have a special episode because I'm actually coming back from like a week-long hiatus. It was not planned, it was unintentional, but I got sick in a way that impacted my voice. I got a really nasty chest cold, and I could not talk for long hours at a time. So a lot of my content took a hit, and unfortunately this podcast was one of them. So with that, I'm back in the saddle. It's not up to 100%, but it's a lot closer to the point where the streams and everything are back live and everything's good. So today I want to talk about a card that Wizards of the Coast spoiled today as part of the, I believe it's the Sliver Precon deck for Commander Masters. And the card is Rukarumel Biologist. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This is a 5-color, so it's Wooburg, white, blue, black, red, green for a 3/3. So already we have a 3/3 for 5, so that text box better be freaking sweet. As Rukarumel Biologist enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Slivers you control and non-token creatures you control are the chosen type in addition to their other creature types. The same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. Then you can pay 3 tap and create a 1/1 colorless Sliver creature token. So we have a 3/3 for 5 that has a very interesting build-around effect kind of built in that buffs slivers as well as other creatures that you control. So it turns all your slivers into other creature types. This is a really interesting janky effect. I like this a lot, and it speaks to me as the kind of thing that I want to build a deck around. One of the big reasons that I like this a lot is that it is a 5-color commander that cares about slivers of all things. But honestly, it's not a very good Sliver commander. That's part of the reasons I like it. And as a result, though, I don't anticipate it seeing a lot of play or getting a lot of hype later on. Right now, it's an interesting build around that is brand new, so we're all kind of talking about it and theory crafting with it. But in 2 years, or even a year, I mean, heck, 6 months, if somebody wants a 5-color Sliver deck, they're going to take Sliver Hivelord, Sliver Overlord, maybe the Sliver Gravemother, the new one at the face of this deck. Like, there are a million preferable options that, or First Sliver from Modern Horizons. Like, the options for amazing 5-color legend slivers that boost slivers in some way are just countless. There are tons of options at that. And that is Rukarumel's competition. And as a result, it's going to get smoked. This card is going to be completely forgotten in a year. That said, I think it's really, really cool. You have a token generation on board that can produce slivers. Now, you may also wonder, why the heck would you want this effect? So it functions very similar to like Arcane Adaptation or Conspiracy, where you just pick a card type, then all your things are that type. Well, this allows you to put in lords and other like typal synergies into a sliver heavy deck that you wouldn't otherwise. So for example, Rukarumel could name, say, serpents. And if you named serpents, then all of a sudden, if you have a Serpent of Yawning Depths down, it says Krakens, Leviathan, Octopuses, and Serpents you control can't be blocked except by Krakens, Leviathans, etc., etc. So if all your dudes are serpents, you can have a board full of slivers that are all buffing each other and doing crazy things, but you add Serpent of Yawning Depths to the mix, and all of a sudden, all of your slivers are now serpents, and as a result, they're all effectively unblockable. You also have cards like Whelming Wave, and, so just pick up all creatures that aren't of these types, of the sea creature types, serpents being one of them. And then the reason that I mentioned serpents specifically, rather than like Krakens or Leviathans, although that would be fun in its own right, is specifically because of Coma, Cosmos Serpent. This is a 6/6 for 7, and it says you can sacrifice another serpent, and then you get some very powerful abilities. So, having all of your slivers be serpents could be really great. And then you add, slivers that give your creatures undying and things like that. Like, it can get bananas. Or was it undying? Or no, I'm thinking of unearth. I believe there's a sliver that can grant unearth. Anyway, all of that action can really get out of hand super duper fast. And this is just one example. The truth of the matter is there are a ton of cards out there that support fringe creature types. And those fringe creature types, a lot of those effects are really stinking good because the creature types that they're supporting are genuinely really bad. You know, like we have Magda, Brazen Outlaw, for example, that buffs dwarves, and whenever dwarves become tapped, you rock out treasure tokens. Well, if you name dwarf with Rukarumel, then all of a sudden all your slivers are also dwarves. So as long as they aren't vigilant, every time you attack, you just poop out a ton of treasure tokens, and then Magda can use those to help you go find other things out of your deck, like other artifacts and things that might help your game plan. It could be really, really powerful. The other one that I want to mention that I think could be delightful with Rukarumel are birds. And the reason that I call that out specifically is, one, I have a very, like, it's one of my favorite creature types in all of Magic. Like, if I'm going to build a typal deck of some kind, like, if somebody asks what is your favorite, you know, creature type, I gotta go birds. I do. I have a soft spot for boars, don't get me wrong, because the Hamhocks branding, but at the end of the day, birds are just delightful because of cards like Soulcatcher's Airy. So this is an enchantment for 1 and a white. And this is what I'm talking about. This support is very, very powerful, but it's narrow because it's only supporting birds. Whenever a bird is put into a graveyard from play, so whenever one of your birds dies, put a feather counter on Soulcatcher's Airy, and all birds get +1/+1 for each feather counter on Soulcatcher's Airy. So this card, alongside a ton of slivers and Rukarumel, all of a sudden, every single time your slivers die, they feed into an anthem effect that buffs the surviving slivers. If you get hit by a board wipe, then all of a sudden this thing is going to become massive, and you can rebuild very, very quickly because each of your little 1/1 slivers that you're throwing out, assuming Rukarumel gets back on the board, all of a sudden become even bigger birds. Now, that brings me to my other concern and my other issue with Rukarumel. They're a 3/3 for 5 that does not protect themselves in any way. I'm not saying that the card is unplayable because it dies to removal, but it is an understated, expensive 5-color commander that is likely going to get swept up in sweepers, and if it gets taken out, then all of a sudden the ability is no longer online, and all of these fun synergies that you built your deck around cease to function. So if I have a Soulcatcher's Airy down, and it has like 9 feather counters on it, right? My entire board is getting +9/+9 because Rukarumel's here. Well, if I attack with my whole board and think I have a lethal strike, all someone has to do is hit Rukarumel. One of the like 12 pronunciations I've done today, one of them is going to be right. But anyway, so I'm attacking with this huge board. They're all massive because of my Soulcatcher's Airy. All the opponent has to do is swords or even just bounce my commander here, Rukarumel, and all of a sudden, the Soulcatcher's Airy no longer applies to all my slivers. It just stops because they're no longer birds, unless I can somehow get Rukarumel back onto the field in one way or another. So that's a massive drawback, like massive drawback. Engine commanders like this can be a ton of fun to build and a ton of fun to theorycraft, and they can be a ton of fun to play. But if they're dependent on a static like this, be aware you have a huge chink in your armor. And that's something that you gotta be ready for. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to run a whole crap ton of counter spells or ways to, like, you know, protect, like cameo safekeeping or Teferi's protection style effects. You don't necessarily need to run a ton of those, but you just gotta be aware, like, you may want a lot of ramp and, you know, in your deck because you may be casting this out of your command zone way more than you think you will. And starting at 5 mana, you know, the first time you have to recast it, it's 7. Like, that tax adds up fast. Starting at 5 is not ideal. So I feel like this is a neat card that is going to be a fun build around, and people are going to have a lot of cool, interesting twists on it. And you're going to see a lot of very interesting low and mid power sliver decks that are leveraging this rather than just pure Sliver Hivelord value. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun to see. I do think this is going to be interesting, and it's going to make slivers maybe a little less frustrating to play against. But at the end of the day, this is a way to power down slivers. That's what this is. And because you have to build a lot of other stuff in your deck that isn't just full-blown slivers. And on the one hand, as somebody who likes to win games, I dislike that. But first and foremost, as a casual commander player who likes to see interesting, dynamic, low and mid power games, I like this commander a lot. It allows you to get creative with slivers in a way that isn't necessarily going to feel overwhelming and just completely overbearing to the other people at the table. So for that, kudos, Wizards. This is an interesting design, and I like it. Also, if you're going birds, by the way, I highly recommend you put Keeper of the Nine Gales in there. If you have other birds, this card's insane. So it's a 1/2 for 2 and a blue bird wizard. You can tap it and 2 untapped birds you control. Return target permanent to its owner's hand. Repeatable boomerang. Pretty good, it turns out. I have no doubt there are ways to combo this alongside some kind of untap effect to incredible value. But anyway, put that out there. It's just, this card's good. Just saying. Anyway, but yes, so this was a look at Rukarumel here on the Overthinking MTG podcast. If you do enjoy it, please like and subscribe if you're on the YouTube. If you're listening on your podcast app of choice, please drop a review, follow, download, whatever it's called on that particular platform. I would appreciate it very, very much. So thank you very much. I'll catch you on the next one.